Today's episode is brought to you by the CU Daily.
Welcome to the CU Daily Cast. I'm Walt Lascos. America's Credit Unions CEO Council recently held its conference in Boston. And to give us all a perspective on the conference, the discussions that took place, and the takeaways, we have with us today three of its attendees. Susan Weinstein, the CEO Council Chair and the President CEO of Orlando Credit Union. Jason Lindstrom, President CEO of Evergreen Credit Union. Jason is also a member of the CEO Council Executive Committee. And Kent LeGrand, also a member of the CEO Council Executive Committee and the President CEO of InTouch Credit Union. Suzanne, let's begin with you. Give us a general overview of the CEO Council Conference and what took place at this year's gathering.
We had an amazing time in Boston this year. We had over 110 CEOs join us, and we got together for a couple of days of just networking, collaboration, and hearing from those in the industry, from a futurist. We also heard from a cyber expert, and then had the opportunity to hear about some best practices of credit unions across the country. We had an amazing facilitator, George Hoffheimer, with Hoffheimer Strategy Advisors, and he led the sessions over the 2.5 days that we were together, sharing his insights with the industry as well. Had an amazing time listening to panelists. We had a couple of our EC members that sat on the panel as well, and then others in the industry that just shared what's going on in their shops.
So I'm also hoping that there was a lot of good time for networking as well, and how would we say, fraternalizing with one another?
Absolutely. A lot of time that we were able to just sit down and sit at tables. We had different breakout sessions where we had some conversations, just sharing what was going on in our markets. And that's what's so phenomenal about this opportunity is you're sitting down with peers. You may have someone in the Southeast or someone in the Pacific Northwest, or anywhere from San Diego all the way up to Maine or Texas to Wisconsin, and you really get to understand what others' markets are like, pulling from some of the best practices that they share, and then using that information and tailoring it to what your market is. So those are one of the, I think, the greatest benefits that we have getting together, and then throwing in those industry experts. It just leaves you with a lot of inspiration. You want to have 100 things on your to-do list that you want to get back and implement. So I'm sure our management teams are like, oh no, they're coming back now. What's the 15 things they're going to throw at us first time they see us? But it's just a wonderful time just to have that creativity and that conversation and just learn what's going on. And also too, sometimes there's challenges that we're facing. So we, come back with some great solutions and just different things to try.
I'm surprised. It's interesting you mentioned that because, these days there are a lot of issues keeping CEOs up at night, I believe. What were some of the topics discussed at the conference? And more important, talk to us about the guidance that was shared among the gathering to address each of them. Kent, if you would take that, please.
Sure. Well, I'll start with one of the more interesting topics that came up had to do with AI and what credit unions were doing with AI, what the economy and what manufacturers and retail organizations are doing with AI, and what does that mean for credit unions in this environment that we're having lots of payments go digital. We had a great futurist who not only talked about the challenges with AI, but the opportunities with AI. Part of the conversation and part of the solutions were that because it's here and it is here to stay, you either have an option of being an ostrich and sticking your head in the sand, or figuring out ways to embrace it and figuring out ways to learn more about it and how to engage it. Because the most important thing that I think everyone took away was that this is something that is going to be here, and the best opportunity for credit unions to ensure our relevancy is to figure out a way that we can incorporate the benefits of AI in our individual shops, while at the same time learning as we go and mitigating the opportunities for disruption.
There's no doubt about it, but obviously, the whole issue of AI today is very, very important. Were there any other topics that came up as well, too, that were kind of
well, I think I can
perhaps,
answer
Jason?
some of that, Walt. From the AI perspective, too, it's the fraud and the potential for phishing and those kind of things that is the scary side of AI, especially as a CEO. Using your likeness, your image. A couple of the speakers did little presentations where, they said, is this AI? Is this really me as a speaker? And they put their picture and their video up on the screen. And we had to decide, was that really them or was that AI creating them? And so I think it was said that it only takes 3 words, like answering your phone with 3 words, and they can recreate your voice and everything. So as a CEO, I think it's really eye-opening to see, because if you're at the top of an organization and it only takes 3 words or the AI to like figure that out, that somebody could call and mimic you and ask an employee to do something. And the larger that you get as a credit union, the scarier that can be. And so that was an eye-opener for me on the AI side of it. And then, just the other things we talked about with fraud and phishing and the losses that can happen with all of that is just really eye-opening as well.
And you're right, smack on target with that, because we've all heard stories about, someone at the credit union getting a phone call from the CEO saying to put this money here or move money there. And it really is all fabricated today. Well, not just credit unions, I should say, but that's any organization.
Yeah.
And it's something that we all really have to be on guard with all the time. I'm going to ask all of you to kind of weigh in on this one. As a CEO, from your personal perspective, what is the greatest challenge you see credit unions face at this moment in time? And please share any recommendations for ways to address it. Suzanne, maybe we start with you.
Sure. I think with, all that we're seeing in the changes in fintech with AI, with our current team members bringing their skill set up to whether their roles are changing. It may not be a transactional role today. Now that we are using ITMs, we're using online banking, our mobile devices, many of the ways our members are doing business or choosing to interact with us today are different. So taking those team members who are in positions that no longer have the volume that they used to have, whether they're serving someone on a teller line or they're serving in some type of a concierge or consultative role, what can we do to help them understand how their roles are changing, help prepare them, help give them the skill sets and the training they need to move into a different role, whether it's an analyst role or taking other avenues and other opportunities that we have. One of the speakers spoke about today, 65% of the jobs in the future for kindergartners that are in kindergarten today are not even developed yet or not even designed. So those are things that it's just going to be important for us to stay in tune, to understand how the environment's changing and prepare our team to migrate into gather that skill set and get excited. Lots of times it's just by motivating our team, showing them what's out there, where their strengths are, and helping guide and nurture that so we can all shift and move into this new environment together.
Mm-hmm. Kent, Jason?
Well, one of the topics that is very interesting to me is this generational change that's going on. And not only in the workforce. I mean, I'm hiring employees that learned about 9/11 in history books because it happened before they were born. And so we're on the cusp of this huge wealth transfer. At the same time, credit union membership is different today in terms of the belonging in the community. With some respects, the Gen Z member looks and acts and feels and transacts business completely different from Gen X and baby boomers. So the fact that we're on the cusp of this huge wealth transfer, and it's a twofold transfer. The first transfer goes to the surviving spouse typically, and then the transfer goes to their children. And so one of the challenges is that if we've got those long-term relationships with those members that are parents, and we don't have relationships, or those relationships are somewhat tenuous with their children, then that represents great risk but great opportunities for credit unions. So one of the biggest recommendations that I would have is for credit unions of all size is to figure out ways to connect with younger members. Younger members tend to be more net borrowers instead of net savers. And so figuring out and creating ways to be able to connect with them and relate with them in a way that is meaningful for them is the best way that I know of to ensure that our credit unions stay relevant regardless of our asset size.
And how about you, Jason?
Yeah, I agree both with Suzanne and Kent on that. I think the other challenge that we're facing is the consolidation of the industry, or the consolidation of the movement, if you really want to talk in credit union terms, with mergers and even acquiring banks. And you see a lot of these larger multi-billion-dollar credit unions continuing to grow at a pretty rapid pace by swallowing up some of the smaller credit unions. And the unique thing about this particular conference is that we're all CEOs. We're all tops in our organization. We're, controlling the culture, controlling the direction, and really looking out for our membership and our team. And I think it doesn't matter what size you're at. You could be $50 million, or you could be, $500 million or $5 billion. But the good thing about this conference was that we had that opportunity to network and really talk to each other about things. And some of the problems that $5 billion credit unions face, I don't face as a $600 million credit union. Some of the problems that a $50 million credit union faces, I don't face as a $600 million or a $5 billion credit union doesn't face. But the commonality there is that we are leading these organizations, and that the credit union movement is still very strong in America. And I think that we have to do a better job of exactly what Kent was saying, and reaching out to younger people to get them to understand the difference and how we can make a difference. And a lot of it, there was some discussion on community involvement and those type of things, or SEG involvement, and how do we keep working that channel. And there's not really a solution to all of it. It's just a matter of that we have to continue to work together. And I think, for us as a mid-sized credit union, working with the smaller credit unions, and then larger credit unions working with us to help out, continuing to form QSOs and continuing to have collaboration. This conference is just one of those dynamic, cool places to be because of that. And the CEO Council in general is one of those great places. I think the biggest takeaway for me is that as a CEO, sometimes it's a lonely place, it's a lonely office that you're in, because people don't want to talk to you. You're the CEO, like they don't want to come share things. And a lot of times we don't have a place where we can have this solace, where we can bounce things off of. I had great conversations with Kent, great conversations with Suzanne, amongst other credit union leaders. And that's what's fascinating, because we are a collaborative movement, and we are moving forward in a lot of directions. And so I think that's a big concern for me, is the consolidation of credit unions, because we all serve a niche at some point. And especially like up here in Maine, we have a lot of former paper mill credit unions that are still hanging on, and they may be small, but they're mighty, and they do a great job for their members. Now, do they have the economies of scale of some of the larger credit unions? No, but they serve a purpose. And I think they need to get younger as well. When you look at the average age of a credit union member, it's 50 or higher, and we really need to get that down to about 35, 40 even would be good if we could get there. And so those are some of those concerns. And, it goes to what Kent says, and it goes to what Suzanne says, because we have employees in those generations that, how do we get them motivated to want to be a credit union employee and have a long-term career in credit unions? That can be a tough one. They might be using it as a stopping point to get to something else. And I always work with our team on making it a career. And I think, to Ken's point too, a lot of older folks in the credit union world, and it's like the younger ones, we've got to do things to attract them and bring them in.
You touch upon it too, Jason, when you talk about the small credit unions, and I'm curious to hear, your thoughts and maybe from you, Suzanne and Kent as well, about, your observations about the future of small to mid-sized credit unions within the overall movement itself. Do you see any major challenges? Do you see ways of how we, I think you got into it a little bit, Jason, when you're talking about collaboration and working closer together and communicating with each other and helping one another. Really the essence of what we're about as cooperatives, right? Working together and collaborating. What are your thoughts about the future of smaller credit unions within the system?
Right now, I think what they're going through, a lot of the smaller credit unions are probably going through, hey, I don't want to talk to Kent. I don't want to talk to Suzanne. I don't want to talk to Jason, because if I do, they're going to signal that that's a merger opportunity. And I think that I'm not in their shoes as a $50 million credit union or $100 million credit union even, but I know that the economies of scale for us as a larger credit union are much better, and that they're facing those issues with fraud. Just the amount of stuff that we have to go through on the IT side, the patching, the continual security updates, all these kind of things. How does an 8-person or a 10-person small credit union shop where the branch manager is, or the CEO is the branch manager, the accountant, the CFO, sometimes even the janitor, if you think of things that they have to do. And how are they going to continue to survive? They're going to have to help and rely on CUSOs and the help of other credit unions. And I think as a movement, we have to be more open arms and not look at it from a point of, oh, well, let's go right to the merger opportunity. Because they're ingrained in their communities and they know who they have as their member, and it's much smaller. It's easy to merge them in and make them a part of a larger system. But is that really what's the benefit for their membership as a whole? And I think that there's some challenges with all of that. I do think there's opportunities for them to continue to grow themselves by using their place in the community and using the membership that they have. But I know they're not getting any younger either. And, that can be a cause for concern. If you can't offer all the services that are out there, Ken's really into the AI, and I'm trying to learn from him on, what more we can do as an organization. We're 600 million. And so I can only imagine, the cost factor, those kind of things. And, how it is for a smaller credit union that, at some point, the CEO could throw up their hands and say, hey, merger's the only way out. And I get that. I understand it. But I think they do serve a place.
The challenges certainly are there because, I hear from a lot of small credit unions, it's, the membership is dwindling. We're having a hard time attracting new members, and they're really struggling with that. Suzanne, Kent, any thoughts as well relative to small credit unions today and what your thoughts are about it?
I know the smaller credit union CEOs and their entire team are probably some of the hardest working, most passionate credit union participants that I've seen. They are there, and you're right, Jason, they're working long hours. When they're with us at our conference, they may have to step aside to approve a loan because they may be the only one with underwriting authority on the staff. So that's one of the things. There's just so much admiration for those small credit union CEOs. And everything from that economies of scale is true. And even with our regulators as well, realizing sometimes you have a regulator who may go into a multi-billion-dollar shop, and then they go into a small credit union shop and have the same hat on, the same mindset. And it's just a different environment. So, we've talked a little bit about, that as well, the regulators, not a whole lot, but a little bit about how impactful that can be when there's expectations of, you may have a shop that may have 20 people in compliance versus a CEO that has to wear that compliance hat. So, being there, and I just so love hearing that we're, people helping people, credit unions helping credit unions. And also too, there's times where vendors may take advantage of smaller credit unions with really, really big price tags to offer services. So utilizing those QSOs, Jason, as you mentioned, is spot on. And I also too love to talk to Ken and get some great AI suggestions and recommendations. And I think we need to continue that conversation. Small credit unions are very relevant. Small credit unions are desperately needed in our credit union system and are very, very important. But it takes each and every one of us, regardless of our size, to say, when you need something, let us know, and go in with the true intent of people helping people. There are a lot of just dynamic small credit unions that are thinking outside of the box. They may come and ask questions of others, but then they take that back and they repackage it, and they find different ideas that fit within their field of membership. So we had a credit union CEO share with us that they had many rural hospitals closing around them in their small town, and how not only was that going to impact the credit union, it was also going to impact their community. So they were trying to solve for more than one challenge with this happening. So it helps us feel very grateful for the markets we're in, but it also gives perspective and gives us the opportunity to lend a hand and say, how can we help you? Even if you just need to give us a call and just get something off your chest, we'll listen. But that's what our industry is about. So I do believe that smaller credit unions are vital. They do fulfill a need, and we need to do what we can to support our smaller credit unions.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Suzanne and Jason. I think, one of the great things about the CEO conference is realizing that how much we have in common. We were all small credit unions at one point in time, and so one of the things is that we all work with people. We all have people reporting to us. And so regardless of size, we're still dealing with humans, and we're still dealing with those issues. So the ability to be able to network and to be able to exchange ideas in terms of how you can succeed is extremely important, because I think there's this tendencies for small credit unions to believe that they have to go it alone. And they really don't. In fact, when I have an opportunity to talk to small credit union CEOs when they come visit my shop, or I'm at a conference, one of the things I will ask them, or I will remind them, is about their importance and relevance. Because it's not everything doesn't come down to price. I remind them, I said, it's my understanding that you can buy clothes on Amazon, you can buy clothes at Walmart. Is everything in your closet from Amazon or Walmart? Oh, it isn't? Why? Oh, so it's not all about price. It's about community. It's about connecting. It's about relevance. And so anytime I get an opportunity, I try to remind small CEOs about how important they are, and that they still can be relevant. But relevancy doesn't always have to start with economics. Economics are important, but it doesn't have to always begin with economics. In fact, if you can leverage the other opportunities you have in your community, you'll be surprised how much some of the economics will take care of themselves.
Well, folks, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back to get a last word from everyone. So we'll be right back after this word from our sponsor.
From the halls of NCUA to the front steps of your credit union, we're covering all the latest breaking news and opinions shaping and challenging the credit union industry like never before. Begin every day reading the CU Daily. Subscribe today.
And we've been talking before the break about small credit unions and the role that they have and their future within the system. And it is kind of interesting because during the commercial break, we were chatting a little bit about how there's obviously a lot of smaller credit unions where the CEO just can't get away. And it does provide a challenge because they're wearing so many hats, and I'm sure they would love to be in Boston, but they can't afford to be away for several days and engage with the conference. So I think those are the kind of challenges that really we're looking to meet here. But My final question to each of you is to wrap up our conversation by sharing, why it was important for you to attend the CEO conference this year in Boston, and more important, how do you see that attendance influencing your leadership role at your credit union? And Kent, maybe we start with you.
Okay, well, the primary reason why I went and will try to go every time is the network ability that being a part of this special fraternity creates. As Jason mentioned earlier, CEO job is a very lonely job, but you are there with other individuals who are willing to support you that have similar lonely jobs. And so, one of the huge takeaways is that once you start sharing each other's challenges and issues, you will come away with ideas you hadn't thought of, with possible solutions that you could implement. And you just can't get that in any other environment. And so, whether you are at the conference or you create relationships that or join the council that gives you the opportunity to connect in between annual conferences, it is just it represents a needed lifeboat that a CEO has to make it.
Suzanne?
Well said, Kent, and I definitely agree. One of the things that I thought was so interesting, networking is just amazing. Meeting your peers and seeing them, face to face, and feeling more comfortable after you leave, saying I can just pick up the phone and call them or send them an email. But what was so exciting is we had first-time CEOs who were there with us, and they're new into their roles and have been experts in their discipline, have come into the CEO seat and have just, sometimes it's like you're drinking from a water hose. Then we have those that have been in their roles for, 20 years plus, 30 years. They bring the expertise from their discipline, or many times we meet CEOs who's been in several different areas of the organization, plus the CEO experience on top of that. So it's like having just a smorgasbord of levels of experience, of backgrounds, those that are very digital forward, digital first, those that are in that transition, and those that are just now learning about it or introducing it to their team or to their board. And that's another big piece of also talking a little bit about is how do you approach your board? Every single one of our board of directors is different ages, different backgrounds, different levels of experience, and being able just to throw ideas and questions out there and hearing what others have experienced or how they've tackled something, it's just been so invaluable. But speakers were great. Love the fact that we're able to have the PowerPoint presentations that are in the app that we can use. I always want to bring everything back and talk to my team about it and have something that I can show them. This is what we discussed. So let's think about this in the future. We're getting ready to do strategic planning and working through all of that together. So not only just that fellowship, that collaboration, you always pick up something new and learn something or remind you of, where you were and very, happy to share those experiences or have someone share something with you that you can take away is probably the most valuable experiences and just what we've had together. So I think those are, I would say, just that camaraderie and knowing that there's someone out there that you can reach out to if you do need some resources or support.
And Jason, why was it important for you to be in Boston for the conference?
I agree with Suzanne and Kent fully that the networking is just fantastic. I think what you bring back to the credit union, that's also important. And it could be just the conversations that you had that helped validate what you're doing as a CEO and what your organization is doing, or invalidate, right? So you could hear something that you're like, oh, we're not doing that. We really should. And so I bring back that idea like, hey, let's move forward with this, or let's do that. Or I get validation that, oh, our numbers are a lot better than some other places in the country. The greatest thing about this is that it's not only credit unions of different sizes or SEG groups or community-based or whatever, but you've got people from all over the country that are experiencing different things in markets or the same things in markets, and having those conversations to know that sometimes, hey, Suzanne may have it great in Orlando because it's sunny there all the time and it's not as cold as it is up here in Maine. And So it's like, it's great to have those conversations, even if you're talking about the weather, right? It just brings that sense of, and I think Kent put it this way, is the humanity of it all, right? And being human and being part of, this great group that we call the council. And I think it goes for all of America's credit unions councils. They all have something to add. And, this one for me, moving through, because I had been in previous councils, as I think Kent and Suzanne, is that networking and all of that is just at a top notch. It's just a different level at the CEO side, where you can sit around a table and have these great conversations. And the speakers are excellent, and that also gives you some pause to think about, wow, what does the future look like with AI? What does the future look like with fraud in AI? What does the future look like in hiring employees? All of those kind of conversations around the table, it just stimulates that. You come back and they're like, oh God, the CEO's back. What are we going to be doing now? And it just stimulates that. And I think that's what we get out of it. It's fantastic.
Suzanne, Jason, Kent, thank you so much for giving us your time today and sharing a lot of the value of the recent CEO Council conference in Boston. Appreciate it much.
Thanks, Walt.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for this edition of the CU Daily Cast. Until next time, stay well.